Why didn't any of these women go to the police?
So that's an age-old question. Like, why doesn't she speak up? Why didn't she leave? Why doesn't she seek help? And so as long as we focus on that, then we're really not going to deal with the true issue.
Joining me now is Sybil Winters-Little from Bay Area Turning Point. Sybil, thank you for being here. Bay Area Turning Point does a lot of good for victims of sexual and domestic violence. And I thought, what better organization to have somebody come on and answer that question and others that you guys may have or I may have in regards to this. So, Sybil, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting us.
I wanted to have you on because I really want to specifically talk about this. I think this can be an uncomfortable conversation to have, especially for people that don't necessarily know how to ask the questions. It can come off as either toxic or ignorant or whatever. But I thought, you know what? I'm willing to ask these questions because it is a tough but necessary conversation we need to have, because I know you know what's going on with this Deshaun Watson situation. 19 allegations of, at the very least, sexual misconduct, up to allegations of sexual assault and potentially rape. And the very first question that keeps coming up, Sybil, that I wanted to get your thoughts on is, why didn't any of these women go to the police?
So that's an age-old question. Like, why doesn't she speak up? Why didn't she leave? Why doesn't she seek help? And so as long as we focus on that, then we're really not going to deal with the true issue. And so imagine being someone who is victimized and having to speak up and ask for help. Most of us ask for help from someone we know, right? Now, you've been a victim of rape, and now you have to reach out for resources like Bay Area Turning Point, which are strangers, or more importantly, to the law enforcement. And there's all kinds of things that are said in regards to working with law enforcement. And so now being a victim who's been traumatized and asking someone to help you, how degrading you can feel at that moment, how embarrassed you can feel at that moment, and how many people are going to believe you in that moment. And remember, that's trauma. And so are you truly in a place where you can seek out help? And so now add someone who's a celebrity or someone with power. Add that to the mix, and then you tell me whether or not you have the ability to speak out. And please keep in mind that sexual assault victims can be men, women, and children, right? Who already feel guilty and ashamed and all of that comes with this crime, and seeking out for help. And so there are some complexities that come with that. It's not just, why don't you call the police or why don't you seek help? It is reaching out and going through a process and a system. And what happens when no one believes me? Or what happens when I watch other sexual assault victims go through this process and no one believes them? Or what happens when I do speak out, or when the person does speak out, no one's prosecuted?
Yeah, that's the thing. You said something, a couple of things there that I think really put an emphasis on this. One is, it's not always the case, but in this particular case, when you have someone with this much power and clout and money and is beloved by the community, then it becomes your word against theirs, because there was only two people in that room at that time. And you may have some, I've seen, I don't know if you saw the text messages and Instagrams, but it doesn't look like it was like, hey, sorry, it got uncomfortable, which could mean anything. Right. If you think about it. But this now becomes their word against his, a popular, beloved athlete who reaches out to the community, raised by a single mom. Who's going to believe me over him? That becomes an issue. And not just for people who are victims of this kinds of allegations, when somebody that's famous or rich, right?
Right. And so you have to think about, what type of power do I have to go up against someone who has money, relationships, power, control, all of those things. And so little old me, how do I go up against that? Who's going to stand with me for that? And do I want to go through the scrutiny that most of society is going to give?
Is it one of those things where you don't want to come forward because you're embarrassed? I mean, I know for guys, you talk to a lot of male victims of sexual assault, especially when the perpetrator was a man, it becomes a prideful thing. It becomes, oh, I'm embarrassed to say that this man did these things to me. And I think the same could be said for women as well, correct?
I agree. And also add to, well, maybe had I not been at the club at 2 a.m. leaving alone by myself, or maybe it's maybe I shouldn't have gone up to his room after the invitation, or all those things that come with, I'm now blaming myself for why this happened, when the reality is, let's put it on the person who crossed the line. Simply said, my body, I have the right to say no at any time, and I have the right to say yes at any time. And when you decide not to listen to those words, it's called sexual assault.
And again, this is all about, the question becomes, why didn't they go to the police? And you mentioned something, the other thing I wanted to talk about. You mentioned issues with going to the police. What are some of the things that sexual assault victims face just by not the scrutiny of the perpetrator or the fame or the money, or maybe it's just a family member there. Everybody's like, oh, Uncle Frank would never do that. What specifically about the police makes it so difficult to go to them in some of these cases?
So as a victim, I have to prove I've been victimized. I have to prove my case, right? And so let's say there's no semen left. Let's say I don't have any bruising. Let's say I don't have any of those things. I'm the massage therapist and he gently rubbed up against me. Should I just get over it? Right? I have to prove that I was violated. And again, that's his word against her word in that case. And so going to the police, are they going to be receptive to the things that I have to say? And then will the district attorney's office decide to take the charges and stand with me in this case? Those are all risks that I'm going to, potentially this might be in the media. My name might come out in the news. My family might be impacted. Am I safe to do these things? Keep in mind that most rapes, the rapist knows their victim. So imagine being someone who's married and trying to prove that your husband or your ex-husband is the person who raped you. Mm. We have women who go through that every day.
It's terrible. And to sit there and think that, you're on the hook too. And I imagine, and I don't know, I mean, that's why I have you here, but I feel like listening to you say that, what's going through my head is I see a woman in the police station saying, well, Deshaun Watson, put his penis, he touched me with it. And you could see the mentality of some of these, just not even police officers, but just men, because as a man, I know how men think. And it's like, big deal. He touched you with his penis. It's not like he put it in you or made you do it. He brushed up against it. What's the big deal? And I think that might be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is that part of it? Because it's like, what is a violation to you and your body and what men perceive that to be is two different. That could be a very vast difference. But at the end of the day, it's about how the victim feels, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, you do the role playing thing very well.
Thank you. What is it going to take for us as a society, or what changes can we make in the legal system? What can we do to allow victims of sexual assault to feel comfortable enough to come forward? Is there a layer we can put between them and the police? Like, what? I know there are organizations like Bay Area Turning Point that can help with that, but they have to have enough courage to go to that. How do we solve this huge issue we have in this country?
So I think you're doing one of the first things, right? Let's talk about it. Let's make the issue known. Let's tell the resources so that people know that they have an option to reach out for help. Of course, partnering with domestic violence and sexual assault agencies like Bay Area Turning Point to help walk through the process. Can you imagine being raped and then having to go and fill out the police report and be all alone and having to do that? And then, I got to go prove this case. So now I got to go see this nurse who's going to poke and prod and stick me and do all kinds of things. And imagine having to do all of that alone. I don't want to go to court for a parking ticket by myself or a speeding ticket by myself, let alone be traumatized and have to go through this walk by myself, especially if I don't know what that walk looks like. And so partnering with agencies such as ours, the other pieces are having penalties stiff enough that, the perpetrators might think twice about offending other people, right? Imposing their self on other people, taking advantage of vulnerable people. Some of that might be laws and legislation that if, I had to think twice about, going out here to commit this violent crime, I might decide if I'm going to really have some harsh penalties that come with that. But supporting the victim, believing them, friends, family members, if you're out there and you're listening and someone comes to you and say, I've been violated, support them.
Believe women.
Help them get to the resources that they need.
Yeah. I've been trying to push that on social media, on this show and everywhere else, because I don't know a lot about this topic, but I know that anybody can see that that's one of the foundations of making this right in this country. Is it starts with just belief, because if more women are believed as we go forward, more women that this occurs to, and men, like you said, and children, see that, society won't shun me, they believe me. It's easier to speak out. And that's, to me, one of those stepping stones we have to get through as a society. I wanted to educate, this is mainly guys that listen to this show. We do have female listeners, but a lot of dudes, mid 20s to mid 50s, we don't know. We mean well. We just are uneducated and ignorant about it. And that's why we ask those questions. What do you say, or what advice do you have to victims now? Somebody that's maybe watching the show that is a deckhead, that is hiding a truth or hiding a violation that's occurred to them, that is too afraid to come out, man, woman, or otherwise. What advice can you give them that could help them take that step to raise awareness, or, to follow through on it?
Please be empowered to speak up, stand up for what you know is right. You have the right to your body. You can say yes and you can say no. And saying no means no. Having sex with another person means giving them consent. And you have a right to your body. And at any moment, you have a right to say no. Bay Area Turning Point is here. There are several other organizations that are here to assist you. We're going to walk you through the process from filling out the police report, going to the hospital for the sexual assault nurse examiner, going to court to face your perpetrator. Please know that there are people out here who are willing to support you. And just when you're ready to give up, pick up the phone and call someone for support.
So you're not fighting it alone. And that's the beautiful thing about what Bay Area Turning Point and other organizations like yours do. It's like you said, I go to court for a traffic ticket and I'm nervous to stand in front of the judge and talk about it. I couldn't imagine if it was a sexual assault case and the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator, is in the room. Unbelievable. Right. And having people in your corner is amazing. And that's why I love what you guys do. This was, I think, very informative and educational. Is there anything else that I should have asked you about that I didn't, that you want to bring up and educate our listeners with?
So I would love to give our hotline number.
Please do that.
281-286-2525. Bay Area Turning Point. We're here in the Clear Lake area. We're here to support. We're here to help. And please, even if you need to just talk or to ask questions, we're here for all of those things.
Did I get that number right on the screen? 281-286-2525 is the number.
Yes, sir.
And they can call. They don't have to give any other information. They can just talk, get an advocate, and start the process of healing with you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for this, Sybil. I really appreciate your time. This was very informative, and I hope this answers some of those questions that people have about, well, why don't they go forward? Now we know.
I hope as well. And Barry, thank you again for supporting Bay Area Turning Point and all of its efforts. Thank you for being willing to take a risk, put your voice out there, and stand up for those who are voiceless.
Anytime.
We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Keep doing what you do, Sybil. Daddy's making a YouTube video.